Picture this. It's March 1945. You are a German lookout stationed across the Rhine River. The night is pitch black. You can't see anything, but you can hear them. The low rumble of Sherman tanks, the heavy clanking of steel tracks on frozen mud, the shouting of sergeants. There are thousands of them. An entire American armored division is staging for an attack right in front of your position. You panic. You radio high command. They scramble their panzer divisions to meet this massive threat. But here is what you don't know. If you were to cross that river and walk up to one of those tanks, you could lift it up with one hand, because it's a balloon. The sound, it's coming from a giant speaker mounted on a half-track. You haven't been outflanked by Patton's armor. You've been outsmarted by a group of artists, actors, and sound engineers. Welcome to the 23rd Headquarters, Special Troops. Welcome to the Ghost Army. To understand how the U.S. Army ended up deploying inflatable tanks, we have to look at the reality of Europe in 1944. After D-Day, the Allied front was massive. General Eisenhower had a problem. He didn't have enough men to be everywhere at once. Every time he wanted to attack here, he had to leave a weak spot over there. He needed a way to lie to the Germans convincingly. Enter the 23rd Headquarters, Special Troops. This wasn't your typical unit. While other battalions were recruiting sharpshooters and mechanics, the 23rd was recruiting from art schools in New York and Philadelphia. They had painters, set designers, advertisers, and actors. Their mission was officially classified as top secret. Their job wasn't to fight the enemy. It was to perform for them. The unit consisted of only 100 men, but with the right tools, they were tasked with simulating a force of 30 Zalosen. They were a traveling roadshow of deception, armed not with heavy artillery, but with a triad of illusion, visual, sonic, and radio. Let's break down how they pulled off the greatest magic trick of World War II. The first pillar of their deception was visual. The 23rd was equipped with the M4 Sherman, inflatable. These were pneumatic decoys made of rubber, fully inflated. From 500 yards away, they were indistinguishable from a 30-ton steel beast. But in reality, they weighed about 93 pounds. But having a balloon tank isn't enough. You have to know how to sell it. According to the unit's history and excellent documentation by Rick Beyer in The Ghost Army of World War II, these artists, soldiers understood that perfection was the enemy of deception. If a tank sits in a field, it leaves tracks. It crushes the grass. It gets muddy. So the artists would go out with bulldozers and carve fake tracks into the mud, leading up to the balloons. They would throw camouflage netting over them, not to hide them completely, but to hide them badly. They wanted the German reconnaissance planes to fly over, look down, and say, "Aha! I see a tank under that net." If the camo was too perfect, the Germans would miss it. If it was too obvious, they'd know it was a fake. It had to be just right. The danger here was immense. It took about 20 minutes to inflate a tank. Imagine being in a field, halfway through inflating a rubber Sherman, when a German fighter plane buzzes the treetops. If that pilot sees a tank that is drooping like a sad birthday balloon, the jig is up. The entire operation is blown. But sight is only one sense, is loud. This brings us to the second, and perhaps most innovative pillar, sonic deception. The 132nd Signal Service Company, a sub-unit of the Ghost Army, developed a weapon that didn't fire bullets. It fired decibels. They mounted massive 500-pound speakers onto the backs of half-tracks. These weren't your average home stereos. These speakers had a range of 15 miles. The engineers went to Fort Knox and recorded the actual sounds of war on wire recorders, the ancestors of tape cassettes. They recorded tanks driving on gravel, tanks driving on mud, bridge, building equipment, sergeants yelling orders. Then they became the world's first combat DJs. They would drive these speaker tracks to the front lines at night. They had sophisticated mixing boards inside the trucks. If the script called for a tank column moving east. They would fade in the approaching tank track, play it for 20 minutes, and then fade it out to the east. To a German listening post across the valley, the audio signature was undeniable. Their ears told them a massive column was moving. This weaponized the fog of war. It exploited the human tendency to fill in the gaps. If you hear a tank, your brain tells you there is a tank. Now you have the look, and you have the sound. But the Germans were sophisticated. They monitored radio waves constantly. If they saw tanks and heard tanks, but the radio frequencies were silent, they would know it was a trap. This is the third pillar, radio spoofing. The radio operators of the Ghost Army were elite actors. They didn't just bang out random Morse code. They learned the fist, the unique typing rhythm of the actual operators from the real divisions they were impersonating. If the 23rd was pretending to be the famous 75th Infantry Division, they would mimic the 75th's radio networks perfectly. They created fake traffic about fuel shortages, command post locations, and mail calls. But they went even deeper. They called this atmosphere. Soldiers from the Ghost Army would sew fake patches onto their uniforms, patches of the division they were faking. They would go into local French towns, get drunk in cafes, and, accidentally, let slip that the 75th is moving out tonight. They knew German spies were in those cafes. They were feeding lies directly into the enemy's intelligence network. So now the German general has aerial photos of tanks, reports of engine noise, intercepted radio orders, spy reports from the town. The illusion was total. All of this culminated in their masterpiece, Operation Viersen. It's 1945. The Allies need to cross the Rhine River into the heart of Germany. This is the final push. The real crossing was planned for a specific sector, but if the Germans concentrated their forces there, it would be a bloodbath. The Ghost Army was ordered to set up 10 miles south of their goal, simulate two full divisions, the 30th and the 79th, roughly 30,000 men. They deployed everything, the hundreds of inflatable tanks and trucks. They played the sounds of bridge building equipment all night long. They flooded the radio waves. The Germans bought it, hook, line, and sinker. German high command shifted the bulk of their artillery and reserves to the south, preparing to crush the Ghost Army. Meanwhile, 10 miles north, the real Allied force crossed the Rhine. The resistance they faced was light. The Germans were waiting for an attack that never came, in a place where no one was. It is estimated that this single operation, Operation Viersen, saved anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 Allied lives. The story of the Ghost Army teaches us a fascinating lesson about warfare that applies even today. Lesson 1. Multi-sensory consistency. Deception only works if every signal aligns. If the visual didn't match the audio, or the audio didn't match the radio, the Germans would have seen through it. It requires a holistic approach to lying. Lesson 2. The value of creativity. These weren't hardened killers, they were artists. Yet their contribution was just as lethal to the German war machine as a tank battalion. It proves that in war, the mind is as powerful as the bullet. Strategic impact. While the inflatables are gone, the doctrine remains. Today, modern armies use electronic warfare to create ghost fleets on radar screens. The technology has changed from rubber balloons to digital signals, but the principle is exactly the same as it was in 1945. The Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is based on deception." The Ghost Army didn't just read that line, they lived it. For decades, this story was classified. The men of the 23rd were told never to speak of what they did. Their wives and children thought they had just driven trucks or peeled potatoes. It wasn't until 1996 that the information was fully declassified. These men didn't fire guns, they fired imaginations. They painted targets on their own backs to draw fire away from their brothers. And in the end, the Phantom Army achieved something rare in the history of war. They won battles not by taking lives, but by saving them.